A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our cases this week: a man is charged with murder for allegedly slipping a morning after pill into his pregnant girlfriend's drink. Police say he wanted the pregnancy terminated, and when the woman refused, he allegedly did it for her without her consent. The young mother is devastated by the loss of the baby, and prosecutors are pushing hard on this case, calling it murder. But first, the Karen Read verdict is in. After 2 trials and wall-to-wall court coverage, the verdicts are in. Not guilty of second-degree murder in the death of her cop boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Not guilty on all charges but one. The jury did find her guilty of operating under the influence. So what happens now, especially to all the allegations of corruption and the cover-ups? Is that over? We're recording this on Friday, June 20th of 2025. Our guest today is Mike King, a law enforcement expert and the creator and host of Profiling Evil. Mike is a dear friend of the show. Mike is here today. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about our cases today, Mike.
Oh, I'll tell you, you couldn't have picked 2 more challenging ones, could you?
I know. Both of them very controversial. Look, I just want to be upfront about this. If you have been following every detail of the Karen Read case and you're into every little detail, this summary of where we are in the Karen Read case is not for you. We're just going to talk about the 2 trials, how we got here, what the jury, at least one juror has been speaking publicly about it. And we hope that you all will, join us on YouTube for the conversation about what you think happened. But I just want to be clear with everyone, because I don't want everyone screaming, but you didn't go into the text messages and you didn't go into Google and you didn't go. Look, there are hundreds of hours of podcasts out there that go into every single detail. But we do want to cover this case because it has been so high profile, and to not discuss it felt like a disservice to the crime community, right? At least that's what we thought here at the podcast.
Boy, I agree with everything you've said. And I think the Karen Read case for me really came down to this decision of evidence versus emotion. And I don't know which is the more correct at the end of this thing, even after watching 2 of them, Anna.
Well, the great thing is that everything was televised, and you all get to make your decisions based on what you saw, the evidence presented, the defense, and how people handled themselves on the witness stand. And that, I think, is the beauty of having these court cases televised. But I got to tell you, when the verdict came in and I'm turning on court TV because all the other live channels aren't fast enough, right? And I'm like, oh my God, it's a sea of pink out there. All her supporters. It reminded me of the O.J. Simpson case. And here is why. Because I was new to Los Angeles, and literally I had been here, less than a month in Los Angeles as a reporter. And they said, the verdicts are in. O.J. Simpson's going home. You go to his house. I go to his house with a TV crew, and I am I can't tell you how many times I was pushed over and bumped to the side and knocked down because everyone was waiting for O.J. Simpson to get back to his house after that verdict. And what I saw on the courthouse steps reminded me of that experience and that energy, whatever your opinion might be of any of those cases. So clearly there is a lot of interest and a lot of emotions attached to these cases and the verdicts.
Yeah, I'll tell you, people may not like the verdict. They may be thrilled with the verdict in Karen Read, but the thing that I found is that defense team figured out how to get reasonable doubt in the mind of a jury. And that, to me, is the win for the defense team. I really believe in the criminal justice system. I'm really disappointed by a lot of things that happened on both sides during that entire trial. And when you compare it to OJ, I actually took part in a documentary that Court TV did on the OJ case. and talked about where I was at the time. I didn't know this, that you were there, Anna, actually as part of the journalist teams that were there. But the thing that I saw was what I classify as the dream team that everyone talked about with OJ. And in this one, more, I want to say the scheme team, because they really had a scenario put together that changed on a pretty regular basis. But the thing that didn't change is that they continued to cast doubt on the Commonwealth story. And boy, that created nothing but problems and obviously saved the day for Karen Read.
Well, and then we will get to that dirty trooper, because that dirty trooper, who was a lead investigator and was clearly biased against Karen and was saying very derogatory things, and there is no way around it. And that killed them on the first trial, and I think it still hurt them on the second. You can't have a dirty, biased investigator and then say to everyone and the jury, oh, okay, so yeah, maybe he's a liar and a schemer, but, the rest of the investigation has integrity. I'm sorry. You can't sell that no matter what you think happened, and there's no looking away from that one. Okay, so let's get into this. We're going to do a recap here. So as we've said, this is a case that everyone has been obsessed with. Karen Read has been acquitted of murder in this very high-profile retrial in Dedham, Massachusetts. The first trial ended in a hung jury last year. Karen Read, 45, has been acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who was 46 at the time. She was found guilty of operating under the influence when she was driving, and she will serve 1 year probation for that charge. They handled that immediately after the verdict came in. So as we said, we're not going to rehash everything, but we are going to give you, the broadest strokes here and the things which are not in dispute. And then I think that, to me, the most telling thing is when TMZ interviewed one of the jurors. That, to me, and that's why I really want to talk about this case, because the juror said, we don't know what happened to John. The prosecution never made it clear to us what happened to him and why he died. And if a juror can sit through weeks of a trial, a murder trial, and has no idea why and who killed the victim here, you got a serious problem.
Yeah, I would agree. And it was so troubling because, again, kudos to the defense for being able to continue to raise doubt and keep confusion out there. The prosecution had a huge responsibility they were able to put Karen Read at the location, but they were there together. They were going to a party. And then everything starts becoming questionable at that point. Did he walk into the house, or was he still out on the street when this happened? And then, of course, all of the expert witnesses that were battling back and forth, and nobody could come up with an agreement that we agree with the defense or we agree with the Commonwealth that this is what caused his death. And boy, you ought to be able to show how a person died before you do this. So maybe that's part of the real challenge that they faced. They couldn't say this is how John O'Keefe died, other than the fact that he froze to death.
And to make it clear to a jury 2 times, 2 different juries, a year apart. So again, these jurors work very hard. They sit there for weeks and they listen to everything, and they have very specific directions. And this jury, during deliberations, asked questions of the judge. And so that told you, something was going on back there. They wanted clarity on some things. I mean, I think they did the best they could. And I'm sorry, but 2 juries that cannot say to you, we believe this is how he died and who's responsible, that's a pretty clear message. That is really clear. No matter what anybody thinks, again, I'm just taking the side of the juries here because they work so hard. And that was their responsibility. So just a few things that we want to go over here. Even though Karen Read's criminal problems are over, she is facing a civil lawsuit filed by the estate of O'Keefe. So she's not done here. And remember, in the way that we mentioned O.J. Simpson, he was found not guilty of a double homicide, but then in civil court, he was found liable. So I have no idea what's going to happen in civil court, but they are two very different forms and very different standards for evidence. So this isn't over. It's not over. It really is not over. A little bit of background on the case, just in case you have been sleeping under a very mossy rock and have never heard of the Karen Read case. Okay, so by all accounts, the two of them had a tumultuous relationship. It's unclear what the status even of the relationship was that night. There's been some testimony and some arguments as to whether they really were still a couple that night. Anyway, they were together. That is not disputed. There are security cameras that show them together. Even Karen Read says, yes, they were out, they were drinking, and they got drunk. This is the night of January 28th of 2022. And keep in mind, there was a miserable blizzard, a snow blizzard out there. So add that to the mix. Okay. So Karen says after they were at the bar drinking, and videos show them, Karen says she drove John to a house party at the home of a fellow Boston officer, Brian Albert. And what happens next depends on what you believe, because there are two schools of thought here, and clearly the jury could not tell us what happened here. They don't know. They don't know. So Karen Read says she dropped him off and he went inside to the party. And prosecutors say that no, John never went inside the home, and claim that Karen struck him with her SUV. And that is what the argument has been through both these trials. Juror number 4 spoke to TMZ. He said he and his fellow jurors have no idea what happened to John. They just cannot figure it out. He said the prosecution's case had so many holes, meaning how did you get from A to B? Because sometimes even with circumstantial evidence, right, you may not see how you got from A to B, but it's very logical. But here, the juror number 4 says it's not. He said they could not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what happened to John and who, if anyone, killed him. And that's the case. I mean, there's really very little discussion to have beyond that now, because the jury has spoken. So just a few more details and then we'll move on. So John was found dead in blizzard conditions outside that house at 6 a.m. on January 29th. 2 days later, an autopsy confirmed he died of blunt force injuries to the head and hypothermia. A few days later, Karen was arrested for manslaughter, vehicular homicide, leaving the scene of a collision causing death. And these charges would later be upgraded after a grand jury indictment. And that's when it was bumped up to second-degree murder. And so she pleaded not guilty. She's always maintained her innocence. She got these high-profile attorneys that really, really made us look at reasonable doubt. There were allegations of corruption, and honestly, it was a little hard to believe the corruption until they ferreted out the dirty cop. And I believe the case fell apart when they found the dirty cop. I'm sorry, but I just think that State Trooper Michael Proctor, who was one of the lead investigators, I mean, he was nothing short of a disaster. He is a menace, right, to criminal justice, because he's everything you don't want in an investigator. He was biased. He was a friend of the victim. He hated Karen. He sent very derogatory, vulgar, sexually explicit text messages about her and how it was awful. I mean, Mike, what do you say to that?
You know, to me, there's not a lot that can be said, Anna, except for the fact that I go back to when I was a young officer and I had a lieutenant. I was working a graveyard shift, and he sat me down one night and we had this long discussion about integrity. And, you know, I mean, there are a lot of people out there that have completely different lifestyles, may speak differently than we do, may use vulgarity as a common course of their language. But when you're in a position like that, where you're representing the government, you really need to have people who are beyond reproach. And we all make mistakes. And you know what? I can't think of even a number of how many mistakes I made as an investigator. But the public person that people got to meet, I think, was pretty similar to the private person that I am. The personality, the kind of speech that I have, the lifestyle that I live, the vices that I may or may not have. Those are all pretty public, and I always felt comfortable that what you're seeing is what you're getting. And so we oftentimes talk about this difference between our public personas, that person that's all shiny in their uniform and they look really nice and they represent things, then that kind of private side that maybe your closest intimate friends get to know. And then there's that secret side, that Tasmanian devil that you really try to keep under control. And when those things are colliding, these are the kinds of things that happen. And that's why I go back to, again, this idea that were the decisions that were finally made based on evidence or emotion. And I don't know, because I've found myself so dang angry at some of the morals, and yet looking at some of the evidence and having a completely different feeling as well.
It was the whole concept of if you have one very rotten apple, it'd be one thing if he was just John's friend and he hated Karen. If he wasn't involved with the investigation, he could say whatever he wants. But as a lead investigator, you can't be so public about your bias. And I think in the first case, the fact that the state didn't suspend him or fire him, but actually pushed him through as a witness and then did not take action because it was actionable until the jury came back and said, we can't come up with a verdict. Like then the state took action and then they suspended and fired Michael Proctor. I'm like, why didn't you do that early on? At least you would have shown some integrity. But instead you're like, your silence was deafening. The silence was deafening.
I guess it's the same thing we see when we see police officers being treated so poorly. 99% of them are acting with integrity and respect and doing the job correctly. This is my opinion. Somebody's probably going to come back and complain about my percentages. But then you have those few that tarnish it for everyone and really create problems. And I look at beyond the Karen Reed case, at the more systemic problem now of the trust in the criminal justice system, in the system of government that we have, and how do we stabilize that and re-earn that level of integrity that we should have there.
Well, it certainly cost them, I believe, the first trial. I mean, the jury tried 27 hours of deliberations. They were deadlocked. Mistrial is declared. Okay. Then a decision has to be made. Do you go after Karen Reed again? Okay. The state makes the decision. We are going to try this one more time. We insist that Karen Reed, will stand trial. We've gotten rid of Michael Proctor. We're going to deal with that head on in the second trial. We're going to say, yes, he was this. We got rid of him. Now listen to the rest of the evidence. Okay. Different approach. I thought that might maybe change things in the second trial. I don't know. This is just as an observer. So the second trial began on April of 2025, just a few months ago. Jurors then sat through weeks of testimony once again, and it was a battle of the experts, media scrutiny, and again, who did you believe? And, whose science did you believe here? After 4 days of deliberations, questions started coming in from the jurors, and the jury made it clear for a second time. The prosecution could not prove its case. So on June 18th, Karen was acquitted of all charges except for that one, driving under the influence. It was really something. If you saw it, Karen and her defense team walk outside the courtroom. It's a crowd wearing pink and chanting, "We love you, Karen." And you know what? What happens to the family of John O'Keefe? Where is his justice? I don't know. I don't
And I
know.
think that's exactly why you have to have that second trial. The family deserves to have that. The Commonwealth clearly has made it very evident that they don't believe that there was anyone else responsible for John O'Keefe's death. And the family deserved to have that case go forward. I'm sure they are maybe frustrated, devastated, and I suspect they will look now toward the civil suit to get some level of comfort that they were on the right track. But why this thing had to go through a second round, especially when they knew they had the minefields that they had from that first trial, clearly to me is erring in the side of compassion to that family that John O'Keefe deserved to have his case heard.
Okay, and just one last thing about the civil case that Karen is facing. She has been sued, but so are the two bars that served her alcohol that night. So we'll see what happens. It is not over.
Yeah. Yeah, and have they set the stage with this alcohol-related charge now that she's convicted of that might help, knowing that that preponderance level of responsibility is so much lower than reasonable doubt that we see in the criminal case? And can that really, at the end of the day, be considered vindication? I don't know. What a tragic case from beginning to end. And nobody has won through this thing. If you're on either side, I just think how tragic.
We can't wait to hear your thoughts. Please go over to YouTube and we will have a vibrant discussion. Our next case is controversial not only because of the alleged crime, which is horrific, but because of the way prosecutors are fighting for justice on behalf of an unborn baby. It's an incredible case. That's why I wanted to talk about it. A Texas man is accused of allegedly poisoning his pregnant girlfriend's drink with an abortion pill to make her lose the baby. He apparently didn't want it, and she did. Oh my goodness. Is this just not the most horrific thing you've heard of?
This is a terrible case. In the moment I heard this one come out, I thought not only of the damage between those two and that little child, but the extended families, this accused person's wife and children and parents. And I just think, how on earth do people get themselves in this mix?
Oh my goodness. And Mike, you put it right there. He was having an affair. The man who's accused here was having an affair, married. And it was the girlfriend, mistress, the woman he was having the affair with, who became pregnant while he was having, cheating on his wife. This entire thing could have been avoided many ways. One, let's not even have sex with someone other than your wife. And then the other option is maybe use protection. Okay? So all of this could have been avoided, but no. And that's why we find ourselves in this incredible situation. And I mean, this is a complicated case. I think there's some evidence that is very damning. He says that he's innocent, obviously. Okay, let's get into this. So 38-year-old Justin Banta is facing capital murder charges after allegedly administering the abortion pill to his pregnant girlfriend. Justin, married, having an affair. Police say when she refused, this is the other woman, she has not been named, that when she refused to terminate the pregnancy, he did it for her without her knowledge. It's so violent, so cruel. At the time of his arrest, Justin was employed in the IT department at the U.S. Department of Justice.
And wasn't it the Bureau of Prisons that he worked for, too?
Oh, my goodness. It's just really... Now, his IT skills are going to be part of the alleged evidence against him. So put a little pin in that one, because we're coming back to that. So the victim here, as we said, was the girlfriend. She has not been identified at all. Police say that Justin's girlfriend told him on September 24th that she was pregnant with his baby. He wasn't happy. She was, but he wasn't happy, and he wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. He said, this is according to the police, he offered to pay for a procedure and even suggested that they order the morning after pill, commonly known as Plan C, online. However, his girlfriend had different ideas. She wanted to keep the baby and wanted to become a mother. Okay, that's September. Let's go to October. October of 2024. It's a month later. Police say the two of them met again, this time at a coffee shop. And this is what police say is part of the crime scene. This is how they describe it. So they talked, and this is where Justin allegedly took matters into his own hands and made a very deadly move, police say, to end this pregnancy without her consent. During this meeting, can we make this any worse? She had just come back from the doctor and had a sonogram. So she was so happy because the baby's heart was strong and beating. She was 6 weeks pregnant, and she said the baby was healthy.
And as you go back and you think about that, where we were 20 years ago when we were looking at cases like this and how much we've advanced to be able to know that that little heartbeat is happening, that little body is starting to form. But it really creates some concerns in my mind because some of the reports suggest that prior to that, he had already told his wife and had been trying to get her to get this abortion. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the actual facts in the case to find out when those notifications were occurring, when attempts were made. But the bottom line is they made a baby together.
Yeah. And hello, you'd have to be a freaking moron, especially if you're already married and have kids, to not know how that happens. Okay?
Yeah.
So, had he just kept his freaking pants on, used protection.
Yeah, and doesn't just the charge itself tell you a whole bunch when they talk about capital murder, which requires premeditation and thought and planning. And now we start to see, as you're laying out what happened here, this story unfold that's supporting what those criminal charges ultimately end up being.
And that's why I think this case is not only, interesting to me morally about, what people do and what's the right thing to do, but from a criminal perspective, the application of the law and the prosecution of this case based on these series of facts, to me, is truly fascinating to see what happens here, because it's a strong application of a murder charge. And we're going to get more into what the alleged evidence is here. Okay, we're at the coffee shop. So according to the police, Justin allegedly bought the abortion pill, that he ordered a coffee drink or some kind of beverage. I don't know if it would be coffee because she was pregnant, so she may not have had anything with caffeine in it. Protective mothers generally, are very cautious about these things. So he orders her a beverage. And you may be saying, well, how do they even know? Why do the police allege he did this? Because there were security cameras in the coffee shop. And according to the police and according to published reports, he orders a drink before she arrives. And the video allegedly shows him stirring something in her drink. Now, you might say, yeah, but that's not all proof. I'm like, well, we're not done here with what police say. So there's that going on. He pre-orders a drink for her. She comes back from the doctor. She's perfectly healthy, right? Baby is safe, secure, healthy, heartbeat, everything's good. They talk. He orders a drink before she gets there. Now, in the event, this is what police say, in the event she wouldn't take the drink, he had a batch of cookies that he went out to the car to get, and he brought the cookies in. She apparently ate the cookies. Remember I said IT, hold a pin in it? Cookies, hold a pin. This is where we're seeing the red flags and the evidence, okay? So I want to get back to the timeline. Timeline is so important to me in figuring this out because of how police figured it out. So this is what's happening, right? But please, I want you to look at how seriously police took this investigation. The next day, after they meet up at the coffee shop, the woman starts to feel sick. She's exhausted. She starts bleeding. She's afraid she's losing the baby. She goes to the emergency room. Ultimately, she loses the baby 2 days after that meeting at the coffee shop. Okay. Now she's suspicious. She goes to the police. She tells police what she believes happened. Mike, to me, this is the crux of it. They took her seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness that they did. And maybe they took her seriously once they corroborated some things, which is what I would have done. Is number one, you believe the victim or the witness, but then you corroborate to make sure, which means they went back and they got that video and they saw something suspicious like the stirring in the drink. They saw him go out and get the cookies and bring them back in and set them on the table, kind of setting the stage for what's going on. And we don't know if by the time they said we believe this woman, that they also didn't start looking and getting some digital search warrants to look at things like internet searches and other kinds of things. But we see them really laying a great case. And compared to the last case we talked about, isn't it neat to see police work starting to happen appropriately here?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. A lot of credit for taking her seriously because you can imagine it's an outrageous story, right? It's like, I'm sorry, what? You're saying what? You have to take, it's just like such an extreme measure in a situation that you would be like, really? Like, you believe he did that? Honestly, and when we get to more of the alleged evidence, you'll see why taking her seriously was so important. Okay, so she tells them, I believe he drugged me. So investigators claim that the video in the coffee shop absolutely implicates Justin here. The video reportedly shows him ordering that drink for his girlfriend before she got there. According to Fox News, the video allegedly shows Justin stirring something into a light-colored cup before leaving the coffee shop to go to his car and then allegedly returning with a plate of cookies for the victim. Okay, remember the cookies. All right, guess what? She still had some of the cookies in her possession.
Thank goodness.
Because you're all saying, well, wait a minute. If he put anything in the coffee, allegedly, how are police going to be able to prove that, right? The proof is in the cookies, people. The proof is in the cookies. Police send the cookies to the lab. And police say those cookies had that drug in it. The drug that is used for an abortion pill, the cookies were laced with them. That's what the police say. Is that unbelievable?
It's fantastic police work. And the question that I have is, are they also able to get, and what's the hang time on those drugs in her system? Was there anything recovered in blood tests when she went to the hospital or other things where they might be able to show that physically in her system? And then, of course, I think some of the internet searches revealed even more.
Yeah. And, police, I'm always appreciative of whatever the authorities will share on a case so we have a better understanding of, what happened here. But they're not obligated, right? All of this will be revealed in due time. So all of you may have many questions, as do I. This is all we have, but this is really something. I mean, this is just really something. Okay. So once they get confirmation, police say, that these cookies were laced, it's time to have a little conversation with Justin. According to police, Justin knew that investigators would be looking for him. Oh, really? Why? Why is that? Okay. He allegedly admitted to buying the after pill with his phone. So one question would be, why did you buy that? She told you she didn't want that. But, I think that's damaging, right? It's definitely damaging. It's damaging that it's in the cookies.
You could certainly say, I offered them to her. She said no, so I threw them away. And that would be what the defenses would certainly try to put out. But the problem is, this is a building pyramid, isn't it?
Cookies. The proof is in the cookies. I mean, I'm telling you, everything rests on those cookies. And then what other tests that doctors were able to perform, or later any kind of toxicology reports that we'll get. So following this sit down with police, Justin's cell phone was taken as evidence. Remember I told you he worked in IT and this would come into play? Okay, here we go. Listen to this one. Police say, while the phone was in the custody of police, they claimed that Justin accessed his own phone remotely, and then he tried to destroy the evidence and reset things remotely on the phone so police couldn't get to it while the phone was in police custody.
Yeah, I mean, two things building up to this that really jumped out at me is, number one, if in fact he's worked in the Bureau of Prisons, if he's had dealings with inmates or other people, he's dealt with law enforcement clearly in some capacity or another. So he has this arrogance or confidence that he says, I know people are going to be looking for me, wanting to question me. And he still goes in and tries to act like, hey, I'm an open book. Let me tell you everything there is to tell, instead of, just getting an attorney and keeping his mouth closed. And then we start seeing all of this unfolding with his experience and ability to go in and wipe that phone. And frankly, from what I've read, Anna, he was successful in many parts of that.
Yes. Apparently, he did delete a lot of crucial evidence that appears to be relevant to the case. But it's my understanding, and my hope is, that there's an IT specialist out there smarter and better skilled than Justin who can recover that data. Right.
Yeah. And maybe this becomes one of those training moments for law enforcement too, that you don't just wait. If you get a device, you start downloading that device as soon as you get it, rather than giving someone an opportunity to leave and wipe something remotely. Again, I think we get better as we learn and make mistakes. And I've made so many. If I could go back and fix everything I did wrong, I would be really good.
But this is the first case that I have covered where the alleged tampering with the phone occurred remotely while the device was in police custody. This is a new one for me. I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, but this is the first case where this has come up and leads to a charge.
Yeah, and what we've learned in other cases is, thank goodness they've got additional charges if they end up having a problem, like we saw the Commonwealth with Karen Reed.
Mm-hmm. Just so fascinating, this case. Well, once police realized what was going on with the phone, come on now, he must have thought everybody was a dummy here. They obtained a felony arrest warrant for tampering with evidence. That's right. That's against the law. So on June 6, 2025, authorities with the Parker County Sheriff's Office arrested Justin on the tampering charge, along with the charge then of capital murder from the Texas Rangers. Wow. So there are two jurisdictions here, which will, of course, complicate things. But so Justin's facing a charge of tampering with evidence in Parker County, and then the capital murder charge has been filed in Tarrant County. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce that county correctly, because the alleged crimes happened in different jurisdictions. One's at the coffee shop, one's at the police department.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on here. So in the meantime, Justin has been released. He posted a $500,000 bond on the capital murder charge, along with $20,000 on the tampering with evidence charge. So in the announcement of Justin's arrest, the sheriff's investigators thanked the owner and the staff at the coffee shop where the meetup happened because they believe that the cooperation there was instrumental and the timing of everything was just instrumental in getting what police say is crucial evidence here.
Yeah, I mean, you think about this in totality, almost everything could be argued except for that moment of stirring the drink and walking in with the cookies, the same cookie that hopefully law enforcement recovered, or at least looks the same as they recovered from the victim who said, he gave me these. They've got that now on video of him bringing those in, which to me is the most crucial piece of evidence in this entire case, because it's there where they get the chemicals that end up causing this child's life to end, and they have him delivering it to her. Everything else, I think you could argue. You could argue, hey, yeah, of course I ordered the pill and I wanted her to take it, but she wouldn't, or anything else along the way. Yes, I was trying to get a backup of my phone after they
That's
took
it. I was trying to back it up on the cloud. That whole story.
And I hit the delete button instead of copy. Or, I mean, there are things that you could argue. And as we've seen juries do, some juries could say, well, that's enough for me because I've made mistakes downloading stuff off of iCloud or,
Well, sure. If you're an idiot like me, obviously I'm going to end up deleting everything and make a mess of everything. Like I couldn't get into my Microsoft yesterday, my Microsoft Word. You should have seen me trying to call Microsoft. Do you think you can get anyone on the phone? Absolutely not. And then the damn bot in the chat box is driving me crazy. I eventually figured it out. But yes, but that's me. That's not an IT expert for the Justice Department.
That's a very good point. Yeah. But again, is it just that seed enough? But that video from that coffee shop of him walking in with those cookies, if those cookies are identified as the same cookie that they tested, I think that becomes an incredibly tall mountain to climb.
Now, I do want to talk about why capital murder. And it's very unique to Texas here. So just to understand what he's facing here. So Texas has some of the strictest abortion laws in the United States. The state bans all abortions except for dire medical circumstances. In 2021, the state enacted laws that made abortions illegal after the detection of the baby's heartbeat. Remember what the victim says. She had just gone to the doctor and the heartbeat was visible. So this is very important for this crime. Now, more recently in 2022, the state also enacted legislation imposing criminal and civil penalties for those who administer abortions. So that is why this case from a legal perspective is so fascinating. It's really going to be the first of its kind. It's really something. This is a capital murder case. A capital murder case. Those are the laws in Texas. We're going to be watching this one really, really closely. It is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases you all are talking about on social media. And here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good. How's it going, Anna?
Good. I got that finger move right back at you.
Nice. Mike, good to see you. How you been?
I've been well, Will. It's always fun to be on. I always look forward to what you add at the end of these.
Well, this week we got a case of a good way to get kicked out of Sam's Club. This case comes out of Lady Lake, Florida, which is just outside of Orlando. And we have a man here who is in hot water after allegedly urinating on over $10,000 of food at the local Sam's Club there.
What?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a high dollar amount. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into what was contaminated, so on and so forth. But this all unfolded on May 30th at around 9:49 in the morning, where a man was allegedly seen urinating in an aisle at the bulk box store. Some people were asking what Sam's Club was in the comments. Somebody summed it up really well. I thought it's like bulk Walmart, basically. It's, the same corporation owns it. It's kind of like Costco, but affiliated with Walmart. So police become aware of this incident after a customer took photos of the alleged offense on her phone. Now she takes these photos to the employees who were able to look at the security footage there to further collaborate these allegations. Obviously, if you've been in one of these places, there's cameras everywhere. Truly cameras everywhere. So according to police, the footage captured our suspect here, 70-year-old Patrick Mitchell, walking up to 2 pallets before facing the shelf, placing both of his hands below his belt line and standing there for several seconds. Now, these descriptions are all coming from court documents here. And funnily, the court documents describe Patrick as engaging in something that they called, quote, behavior consistent with urination. So I really wonder how many times that's been used in a police report or court document.
Behavior consistent with urination.
Consistent with urination. That one's going to stick out in my mind for a while. But this wasn't allegedly a quick stop for our suspect here. You know, you would think maybe if this was a situation you really had to go, you'd get that done. Maybe you'd get the heck out of there. That's not what happened here, according to authorities. They say that the footage then, after this alleged incident happens, Patrick is allegedly walking around the Sam's Club, and then he sits on some of the patio furniture there for around 10 minutes. And then the kicker is he paid for the items that he got and left the store, almost like nothing had happened. Side note, why are these places like Costco and Sam's Club always trying to push patio furniture too? There's always like
what people need patio furniture. What's your problem there, Will?
I've never been there when I'm like, man, I need a big jug of mayo and some patio furniture. Maybe I'm just not the target demographic. Maybe I'm just not.
I get so excited every year at Target when spring is coming and then the patio furniture comes out.
That's fair. You know what? I don't need to be a party pooper about the patio furniture. I love patio furniture. Love patios. So I'm all for it. So,
jeez, Will.
After after the employees and store manager review this footage, the employees are tasked with checking these pallets, which they confirmed were contaminated with urine. Again, not sure how you do this. I don't know if it's like a luminol-esque thing where you spray it down and it's like, oh yeah, these are definitely.
I believe they detected some urination.
Yes. Well, yeah, something consistent with urination for sure.
The byproduct of.
Now, the target of this alleged offense is kind of interesting here because the affected items reportedly included 188 cans of Vienna sausages, along with 300...
Not the Vienna sausages, for God's sakes, man.
The Vienna sausages, 188 cans of those, and 345 cans of Spam, according to court documents.
But wait a minute, how much urine did this guy have?
Right? It seems like quite a bit.
Jeez Louise.
Sounds like he's staying hydrated anyway.
Well, you got to be hydrated. That's why I've got my big canister here. I'm going shopping later.
So store managers tell authorities, obviously, there's policies on this. They have to throw away all this contaminated merchandise. And
I sure would hope so. I hope that they're not going to hose a can down and say, everything's fine.
If you see a deal that's too good to be true near your Orlando Costco on Vienna sausages or Spam, just stay away.
If the Vienna sausages
I just can't believe they have $10,000 worth of Vienna sausages. I didn't realize they sold that much in a year.
That's the thing, yeah. So between these Vienna sausages and the Spam, they claim that it was a loss of more than $10,500.
Okay, so, we'll give them that. Things are very expensive now.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 500 plus cans of stuff here.
Yeah, that's true.
I can see it. But there's anything over $1,000 is kind of it ups the offense here. So police, though, are still left with needing to track down our suspect, Patrick, here. And once again, the employees at the Sam's Club come to the aid of authorities. They use his membership card to track down his address. So they get to Patrick. He's arrested. He was charged with criminal mischief resulting in more than $1,000 in damages, along with disorderly conduct. Now, I got to say, he's just charged here. He has pleaded not guilty to both counts, and his next court date is scheduled for June 30th. But wow, what a way to get your Sam's Club membership revoked. Like, I just, of all the things. And I guess the thing too that got to me is like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I could understand it's a big store. Sometimes it's hard to find the bathroom, but he continues to go about his shopping thing.
Well, he was relieved, so he felt better. He had the.
That's true. Maybe
he didn't have that nagging thing bothering him, distracting him from his shopping and his little respite in the patio area.
I've gotten this solved. I can get my snacks. I can look at some patio furniture.
This is really weird. Like I'm just, look, you said that he's 70 years old. So
yes,
I don't know. We have no idea, but obviously this is not normal behavior. So unless he was making some kind of a statement and he was mad at Sam's Club, that maybe he's not got all his faculties there, because that's a very unusual thing to do, unless it's a deliberate act, right?
Yeah, that's got to be your defense, doesn't it? Get your pre-dementia or something. You gotta claim something, boy.
Yeah, well, commenters kind of spoke on that too. Us and Blue said he's 70, dementia possibly, sad if it is, or he was drunk. Again, they haven't alleged anything, because I would think it would be like a drunken disorderly charge instead of like disorderly conduct, but maybe they just didn't have enough to prove that. I don't know. Again, I can't speak on it, but it was, once again, 9:49 in the morning. We had a case last week where a fellow was accused of DUI, and it was like 9 or 10 in the morning. Boxing Fox had some alternate ideas on merchandise to be targeted here. They said write your name in the celery bin, which
write your name. I mean, that's a missed opportunity.
I guess it is. Yeah. So we got a lot of comments, obviously, about this dollar amount may be said. So they watched him do it to rack up the amount for a bigger charge. I don't think that's what happened here. I don't think that they were aware of this incident until well after it had occurred.
Yeah, and if these were cases, I mean, this is trickle-down economics.
Oh, God. Good one, Mike.
Nice.
Well, thank you.
Very nice, Mike.
And then we got another commenter who was just not believing this dollar amount. Griojas said, there's no way he can pee long enough to rack up $10,000. They couldn't even get that much in the basket on the old show Supermarket Sweep, which I love. But Supermarket Sweep, as I recall, was not ever in like a bulk item store, because I feel like if you were trying to get a certain dollar amount, you just, it'd be a lot easier on a Sam's Club or something, because A, they have electronics and stuff, and B, you could just, lift a whole pallet onto the cart. I don't know how the race would then go, because there's like a race, there's a race element to Supermarket Sweep. Were you a Supermarket Sweep fan, Anna?
No.
Oh, fair. I just remember it being on when I was like a very, very little kid. But yeah, do you have any additional comments before I get on out of here?
Thanks for reminding me. Yes,
get on with their week.
Here I am busy trying to picture what's going on at Sam Clubs in my head.
Our minds have been injured on this one.
So I do read your comments. I try to read as many of them as possible, and I also try to respond. So we've been recently sharing some of the comments with you here. So this is in response to our podcast last week. Yay! I love seeing this podcast. Something about how I hope that's me. She delivers the news, expresses her thoughts and feelings, always have the best guests to share their thoughts and opinions, which sometimes makes me wonder and change my thoughts. Thank you for coming back. May God continue to bless this channel. Is that not like the nicest compliment, that the conversations that we have with each other about cases, can inspire someone to perhaps look at it slightly differently, maybe think differently? I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I just want to have a discussion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hope, right? We hope that we're honoring the victims and, hopefully talking about this in a way where other people can kind of continue the conversation and come to their own conclusion on what justice would be.
Yes, exactly. So I thank you so much for that lovely comment and compliment, because that really is the best compliment that you could give us, to say that you enjoy the conversation and then you enjoy our guests like Mike.
But that'll do it for this week's comment section. As Anna said, you can do this on any video over on YouTube at My True Crime News. We're also across all social media at the same handle there. But until next week, don't do crime.
Now, before we go, Mike, I've got a little programming note. I love to say that. That's like old school television. I always thought that was the funniest saying. We have a programming note. I provided some commentary on the current episode of 2020, which is available now on Hulu. It's a fascinating breakdown, really, of how a convicted killer, very young convicted killer, who took out his love rival. This was all part of a love triangle. How he fabricated new evidence and did it behind bars. Claimed that there was a new witness, managed to also get another witness to recant, and it all was happening from behind prison walls. And what a manipulator this young man was, how he orchestrated everything behind bars. Here's a clip.
You were also able to go through some financial records. What did you find that helped you connect all the dots?
So once obtaining Ms. Edwards' Cash App, I found payments to her in larger sums of money, hundreds, sometimes 1,000. So then my challenge was to figure out, well, who's sending those deposits?
Investigators discovered transactions and messages confirming that Pedro Bravo, using the pseudonym Anthony Gibbons, arranged for more than $7,000 to be sent to Kelsey Edwards. Learning all of this, what's going through your head?
I guess I'm shocked by the complexity of it. The amount of subterfuge, lies, and creation of false evidence is beyond what we would ever see. It's very unusual.
Kelsey Edwards is arrested and explains what she knew to Brian Kramer.
He wanted me to sign an affidavit saying that I had witnessed his fight with Christian and that Christian got up and walked away from the fight, still breathing.
Is he asking you to commit a very serious felony out of the goodness of your heart?
He told me that he would pay me a lump sum when I signed it, and that he would pay me weekly after that until trial.
Kelsey Edwards pled guilty to fraud for the fake affidavit. So this is a case of two young men in love with the same young woman, and of course, it ended violently. This is the murder of college student Christian Aguilar, and it's on ABC's 2020. It's just a really fascinating case, and they have a lot of exclusive interviews with the convicted killer over the course of the years that 2020 was following this case. And it ends, it's all very sad, but boy, Mike, when you hear in cases, right, where there's new evidence, a new witness, or the old witness recants, and sometimes these things are really true, but in this case, it was all fabricated.
Wow.
Yeah, very interesting.
Something how someone who's influential, you see these wolves in sheep's clothing who can tell you something and get you to start believing it after a short time.
Really something. Well, that is our podcast for this week. Mike, where can people find you or follow you on social media?
Oh, thank you, Anna. It's so fun to be with you anywhere at Profiling Evil. So all the different channels and thank you again. And if you're going to CrimeCon, I'll be speaking at CrimeCon. And by the way, you can use the word KING when you sign up there, and they'll give you a 10% discount. So if you want to be there, Anna, I'll make sure you have a pass.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Mike. I'll be your plus one. You can find this episode, all the episodes of our podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that's where we have the really vibrant conversations. It's a little bit harder on other platforms. That one just lends itself to the conversation. So please, we'd love to hear your comments on today's two very controversial cases. We even have a newsletter. You could sign up for our newsletter. I like to say it's very 1995 here sometimes at True Crime News. And until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Crime never stops, and neither do we.